Greetings to the room and all our viewers around the world. Thank you for having us. Thank you to the organizers and the panelists of this session. My name is Norah Ariga. I'm a lead technical sales with Reservoir Technical Services with Baker Hughes based out of Nairobi, Kenya. I'm joined by group elite panelists that will be discussing a session on global solutions, local impact Kenya. We will first start by an introduction by themselves, and then we will proceed to the opening remarks and the session of today. Over to you, Dr. Onacha.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Stephen Onacha. I've worked in the geothermal sector for many years. I have some experience in both Kenya and some of the international countries in different responsibilities in research and resource development. So my expertise will be mostly towards resource development. Thank you.
Asante, Dr. Onacha. Mr. Simon Kirui, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Engineer Simon Kirui. I'm an energy planner at KenGen, Kenya Electricity Generating Company. My expertise has been in conducting studies and developing projects for power generation. We've been doing that for the last couple of years. And I think in this panel, we'll share experiences on how we've been able to craft our projects, looking at the various aspects, especially the challenges and technical, commercial, legal, and so on, that we've gone through in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirui. Mr. VenuGopal, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is VenuGopal, Director SOSIAN Energy. We are the power geothermal developer. We are IPP in Kenya. We have experience in developing the power projects in Kenya. We already partnered with the GDC on the Penangai project. We completed the plant. So we are in the field last 14 years to development this power project. Experience in the development and construction of the power plants and operational. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. VenuGopal. We will start off by reading the opening remarks, and then we will have a discussion, open discussion amongst our panelists, and we will finish off with a Q&A section, one from our global audience, and then two from the audience in the room. So Kenya is already ahead in the curve as the 8th largest producer of geothermal energy in the world, contributing to both environmental conservation and economic development of the country. Kenya currently has an installed megawatt capacity of around 1,000 megawatts installed, and has a further potential of 10,000 megawatts. This is just a 10th of the potential megawatt that has been developed to pipeline. The government of Kenya has just completed a very successful Africa Climate Week, and they've set up an aggressive target to achieve 100% renewable energy by the year 2030. In the past decade, geothermal projects have encountered several challenges in the country, taking over 10 years to reach to completion, contributing to a very low average annual generational capacity growth. Among the challenges include resource risk and upfront financial payments, both in the context of providing the resource viability for power generation, as well as being able to fund extensive drilling campaigns and corresponding large-scale power plant and related infrastructure. The panelists today are to create a participatory session to discuss challenges that projects in Kenya have experienced in the previous decade from a technical, resource risk perspective and a commercial perspective, and highlight the global solutions that could be adopted to upcoming and existing projects, not only in Kenya, but Eastern Africa, to fast-track the exponential growth of geothermal projects. We will open the floor to the panelists, and I'll begin with Dr. Onacha. And the first question we have for you, Dr. Onacha, what are some of the key challenges and gaps that geothermal projects have faced in the recent past? I'll probably add a twist to the question and ask you to just identify one challenge, and then you can take us through what that challenge has been in the recent past. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. As has been said, we need to discuss, so I might not have all the answers. The audience, I'm sure, and the present one and the others have the answers. One, I think before I go to the challenges, we have mentioned that we have a potential of 10,000 megawatts, and so far we've done only 1,000 megawatts. When you look at the time it's taken to develop the 1,000 megawatts, it's over 60 years. So if we go at that pace, to do 10,000 megawatts will take how many years? 60 times 10. 600 years. None of us, our great-grandchildren, will be here. So then what do we need to do? Because that's the first challenge. If we don't look at a different way of doing this 10,000 megawatts, it's going to take a very, very long time to do it. So in terms of development, you can mitigate the resource risk through investment in technology, collaboration around the world. There are lessons learned from other people who have done it. For instance, in terms of research and development, there's a missing gap. I don't think most of the companies as is set up today want to do research and development from their balance sheet. It would be a tall order to do that. And when we talk about resource potential, if we are to take about the area where we are taking the 1,000 megawatts, at this time, do we know if we even have deeper resources that we can develop more efficiently and faster? Who is going to put time and resources to prove that? For those of us who've been around for a long time, Olkaria drilling was less than about 2 kilometers. Now nominally we drill to 3 kilometers and the production has increased. So it is not a resource issue, it's the efforts that are made to quantify the resource and put into the resource into production. And linked to that, I think we focus more on electricity. If you take the 10,000 megawatts, it means if you maybe multiply by 5, the resource potential in terms of the heat content might be over 60,000 megawatts. What do we do with it so that we develop it holistically? So that even the marginal resources that can be looked at, probably they could be financially viable if a holistic model is looked at. So in terms of looking at that, there are other places where they've done research in the world. Was involved in one project called Deeper and Hotter in New Zealand. I think Icelanders have done deep drilling. Other people have done deep drilling. Maybe we don't need to go far. I was talking to my colleague. Maybe we just need to drill deeper in Olkaria, where the infrastructure is already there, and then we'll have cheaper electricity. Yeah, because it is already developed. So that is all linked to the cost of financing. In terms of resource risk, more specifically, the biggest impediment to geothermal development is finding temperature. Other factors kept constant. If you don't have temperature, you don't have geothermal. So in Kenya, what are the risks? Basically, if you look at the places that are already drilled, temperature is not an issue. It is the pathways in the reservoir that creates the wells that is an issue. So there's a challenge there in understanding how do you quantify these pathways right up front so that you can target the wells to be optimally situated for production. I think there's need to invest sometimes in new technology and research to answer that question. Instead of drilling 20 wells to find 6 are productive. You can drill 5 wells. That will lower the cost, the time for bringing these projects online. It has been mentioned about drilling technology. It has evolved over time. If we have to drill deeper, we need new methods of looking at the drilling equipment. Do we have the personnel required to do it? Do we need to train more people? So those are some of the questions we need to ask. But one of the other things we need to look at in terms of resource risk, we have an idea about the risk of getting a good well or a bad well. What about the long-term risk of exploiting the resource? You can imagine if we do the 10,000 megawatts, the investment that will go, the physical investment that will go into this is huge. So what do we do with managing the resource such that they are predictable over a horizon of 50 years, the wells will be still productive to give power? And you can imagine a scenario, for instance, where, say, Olkaria that is producing 1,000 megawatts, all of a sudden the field is dry. What will that do to the country? Are we putting in place protocols to define how we collect data for monitoring? Are we putting in place protocols on how we share the information? Do we have a statutory body that really looks at people exploiting this resource optimally? And what are the trigger points of making sure if there's a problem, there's a warning? So in summary, I'm saying that there's risk on technology, there is risk on the resource, but what is also not known is the long-term impact of development. Just to give, because our colleagues are here, for instance, in Menengai, we have 3 IPPs. If one were to affect the others, what will happen? Or if the resource wasn't there, what will happen? So these are some of the things we need to think about as we move ahead as a country. Thank you.
Asante, Dr. Onacha. Just to add, in terms of the long-term risk of exploiting the resource, I want to pass it to Mr. Kirui. Coming from KenGen, a company that has been on board operating for the past 60 years to ensure that we get to 1,000 megawatts. What were some of those long-term risks that have been along the project, mostly from a resource perspective as well as from a commercial perspective?
Thank you. Thank you, Lynette. In terms of our resource development journey, yeah, it has been long, as you say, right, will say, spanning to over 40 years, going to maybe 60. The initial risks were, of course, mostly geological exploration, also, in terms of getting to know exactly where the resource is. But over time, because of capacity building, technology advancement, we've now perfected that, and we are more precise in locating the resource in the subsurface. And moving forward, we've also had challenges in terms of even the drilling itself. Drilling initially, as my colleague here said, in the beginning, we were drilling up to 2 kilometers. Nowadays, we are going up to 3 kilometers, more or less like the norm. And we are finding that is more successful and more productive. And even the temperatures are even higher. Temperatures and pressure are higher. And the risks still are striking a dry well, it's quite expensive. Cost of drilling is still very high. And even the drilling materials, also capacity. We still need to develop capacity as a country to be able to do some of these technical jobs. And the other risk, of course, is from our experience, we know that geothermal is renewable. Of course, we find some wells also dissipate some decline. They seem to indicate because of monitoring. We realize some of them tend to decline with time, and of course that calls for, because we've contracted that amount of electricity, power, you have to do makeup wells, and it's a risk in the sense that we don't know for sure how long the resource will be sustained. We have, of course, been utilizing it for over 40 years, that we can comfortably say. But can we go for another 40? Can we go for 200, 300 years? That's what we don't know. But we, of course, try to mitigate by ensuring that we are re-injecting and again re-injecting the fluids at the right places. But yeah, it's a risk. It's a risk because you really don't know for 100% sure that this fluid, all of it is going to the reservoir or some of it is getting lost along the way. Yes, so those are some of the risks in terms of drilling. And yeah, the cost of the rig itself is massive. The drilling rig is not a cheap equipment, and imagine, several billions of dollars you have to sink to be able to drill, and then you strike dry wells. So it's a risk that, but rightfully so, government is taking up that risk in terms of setting up the Geothermal Development Company to be able to cushion the industry. And that has really gone a long way in helping us to mitigate, in a way, part of that risk. So I think in terms of drilling, that's how we've been able to mitigate. And we've also advanced in our resource modeling for trying to really quantify the amount of resource in the subsurface. And we continue to get more and more advanced methodologies of quantifying the resource in terms of modeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kirui. I'll pass the mic to Mr. VenuGopal. Mr. Kirui just mentioned on what has been a massive investment in terms of securing the rig, and how the government came in and stepped in to combat that, is that they use GDC to ensure that they cushion the IPPs. As a director of one of the IPPs in Kenya, my question to you is around what are some of the key learnings that you've carried along from your project, coming from an IPP perspective? Were you part of the team that had to put a massive upfront investment, or was your project part of the team that had to go through the GDC? And what are some of the key learnings that can be taken across to subsequent projects?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for good questions. And we learned a lot during our implementation of this project, especially this we have experience above ground level experience. The one Onacha has a below ground level, I have the above ground level experience. And most of the risks we found on that we put the hybrid system of technology. It is compared to the traditional technology, which is very fast technology. We finished this project within 18 months of the time, and this project, we done a different way of closing the finance. We kept whose amount of as equity as a risk. We taken the risk of putting the equity fund first, then we done the construction, and we done a different way of this project as EPC plus finance. So we taken the finance, we got the suppliers credit, and taken that one to pay back after the completion of the project, which is a advantage now. And because of the many reasons, we started the project more than 10 years ago. More than 10 years now, we are production level. And one of the another risk of while construction is that most of the geothermal plants not in the terrains of the project is a bit difficult area where we need to transport the equipments. So transportation is one of the risk, and also this investments risk we face because of country risk, and geothermal have some risk of the, as Mr. Onacha mentioned, of the resources and the stream dryness after some time. That is where the finances are looking at keenly. And but luckily, if you have past experience, this geothermal power plant is in Kenya in 1989 or somewhere. So we never face that risk of the dry of the wells, because there is always do the new wells to get the steam. So whenever the every year this they need to do the new wells to get the steam. So there is a dryness may not be we not experience as of now in the country. That's one of the area to mitigate that risks. And yes, this is my experience regarding the.
Thank you, Mr. VenuGopal. So just to summarize, the panelists, I guess what I'm hearing from you is that the largest risk that most of the power producers in Kenya are facing is one, the resource risk, which seems to carry a big percentage of the risks that are involved with geothermal projects. And Dr. Onacha and Mr. Kirui have sort of highlighted some of their learnings or what has been the experience operating in Kenya for the last decades. And my question goes back to Dr. Onacha. During your presentation or your session, you did bring up some interesting points around the resource and what has been done or what could be done. So my question to you is some of the key learnings that you've highlighted, for example, integration of the data or ensuring that we have a data room, and government ensuring that there are regulations in place to ensure that we're capturing this data and we're using it across all the projects that we currently have. Some of the findings that you spoke about in terms of risk resource, in terms of the resource, and now that you're drilling deep and you're getting hotter temperatures, how could all those learnings be captured, and how could upcoming projects ensure that we are tapping into what has already been done in terms of lessons learned, and how could we also tap into available technology to ensure that projects going forward are successful and are brought to pipeline at a shorter timeline?
Thank you. I think from the onset, I'll be a little bit biased. In my other life, I'm in Geothermal Association of Kenya, and some of these things are supposed to be brought together by these associations. In the world of physics, they say inertia doesn't create anything. So sometimes when things are left on their own, they can't happen. And we need to push that space so that there's a wealth of information from Mrs. Olkaria. How does a new person coming into a project space benefit from that data? Because some of this data was initially acquired using public funds. So it should go into a pool of where these are lessons learned. Just to take a few examples in the fields. If you go to many of our fields sometimes, you find we have a casing problem. Either most of the times you have not cased at the right depth. So there's water coming in. If you knew some of this information prior, it would save you a lot of money in terms of not doing and repeating the same mistakes. There are lessons learned from just drilling directions. If you take a well and drill it randomly in any direction, it will not be very productive sometimes. So if you know prior that these are the preferred drilling directions, it will save you a lot of time. And this information, we have government institutions, we have the regulator in terms of the ministry, but then there needs to be policy around how information is shared so that people don't repeat mistakes. And some of the things we've recommended is, would we have an independent board that looks at all these things in terms of who's bringing in what data? Because sometimes if the protocols are not defined, I might give the wrong information. But who is there to look at what is the consistency of this information and how can it be used to mitigate some of those risks? The other thing is, it might not be directly related, but in terms of strength, there are some policy issues. Maybe we'll discuss those. Especially from private sector, you can do your projects. You have to do your project from the end to the beginning. So you need all documents from the end. I think one will talk about this. Whereas in public sector, you can do the projects incrementally, and it doesn't matter maybe what time it takes. But in that space of the private sector, then you need all the documents you need to have a project that is bankable. Otherwise, it will not happen. So whether you'll have the right people, you have the right policies, unless they are effective in making the projects bankable, it will not happen. So that's what I would like to say about this.
Thanks, Dr. Onacha. So, quick one. We do have a question from the audience, and it says, with COP28 in the horizons, what are the panelists' view about the role the world can play in helping get geothermal deployed in Kenya and the continent generally? That's one question. I think I'll pass that to Mr. Kirui. And then the second question is oil and gas engaging in geothermal exploration and development in Kenya currently? Any projects in the pipeline? I think I will proceed to answer that, but we can start with you, Dr. Onacha. Sorry, Mr. Kirui.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you said COP28 and geothermal. Yes, we have, as a country, several projects which are lined up, geothermal projects to be developed. We are in the forefront of doing a number of feasibility studies. That is when I say we, it's the whole sector, including KenGen and even our colleagues in geothermal, which is government. And we've even discovered new fields in Baringo, we call it Paka, Silali, and all these places. It's promising. The amount of resource is massive, and I think at the moment where we sit, we really need the financing to really be able to develop these resources. The limit at the moment is not the resource, it's the financing to be able to realize this resource and be able to use it to generate electricity, and also even use it for, in heat form, like for agro processing, for drying some of our crops, like even vegetables, so that they can be stored. So, direct use for steam in terms of you're using that geothermal. There are a lot of opportunities. We have explored a few, but there's massive other ways of using. And also going into COP28, as KenGen, we have even also engaged and even tapped the region. We are helping some of our regional markets to develop geothermal, like our neighbors in the north, and we are even helping others to do geoscientific studies. So going forward, geothermal will continue to play a very big role in climate change in this country and the whole of Africa. Thank you. And even, sorry, I do not forget that we talked at first about carbon capture, and indeed the geothermal fields and rocks can really help a lot in carbon capture, and that also helps in climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirui. Thank you for your insights. We have one more question from the audience for Mr. VenuGopal. How do we get from megawatts to terawatts, within the next few decades? Have there been any strides plotting for the next generation geothermal in Kenya, EGS, AGS, or hybrid technologies?
Thank you. So, as Dr. Onacha said, it's not a long journey. So, he said 600 years to develop these projects. So, to fast track this development, mostly that bankable documents required to finish that one. That's where we need to fast track it so that it is easy to develop it faster. That's what I can say.
I will add on for Mr. Kirui. Anything KenGen is doing in terms of direct use? Are we also, as a country, embracing EGS and AGS and all that technology that is out there, considering we have really hot temperatures, but yeah, is there room for technology, especially for EGS in Kenya?
Yes, thank you very much. We have a lot of room. As a matter of fact, we have actually, of course, we use the high temperatures we've been using to generate electricity, and we have a lot of innovation sessions where we brainstorm internally and even externally. We have every year what we call our annual International Innovation Conference, where we invite ideas, we brainstorm, we compete. But we have, even at a very basic level, we actually have a geothermal spa where you people are invited to go and swim in some of the geothermal hot water, and they are therapeutic. We are also exploring ways of mining some of the minerals in the brine and a number of other things. And in terms of technology, we have used a lot of, we are going into hybrid systems and even low pressure systems to develop, to utilize this resource. And we are not stopping at AGS, we're going into all of them. And we are constantly finding new innovative ways of lowering the cost. Remember, the customer is always pushing for lower and lower cost of electricity. And so we have to look and minimize all our resource wastage, including even venting at night when there is low demand. We are looking at possibilities of putting in place energy storage in form of battery, so that when there is less demand, we store the energy and use it when it is needed most. That's like load shifting. Thank you. I think my colleague, Dr. Ari, wants to add a point.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add on the question you asked about the COP26 and all those conferences that are going on. 28, I'm behind schedule. I think we need to find a mechanism of moving from talking to action. And that mechanism, I'm sorry, has to involve conceptualization of actual projects. And I think from where I sit personally, I don't know any of projects that have been conceptualized to answer this question. But these are specific projects that will go into this within this time frame to answer those questions. And related to that, because we have a wealth of experience locally and internationally, it might be related to the question you'll answer. But is there a policy framework for IPPs and public sectors to harmoniously work together in terms of realizing projects? So I think there's something missing, that there needs to be actual conceptualization and prioritizing of these projects. Why I'm saying that, some of the geothermal resources in Kenya are way up in the north, from where you mentioned Baringo Silali, Paka. They will require serious infrastructure. They will require serious security support. So there must be a holistic mechanism of all these entities working together in an effort to try and address some of individual projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. I agree with you. There is, in terms of real projects, yes, there are, but we don't have a project for COP28. We have, as a government, what we call the least cost power development plan, where we look at the medium term and the long term. Medium term here, we look at 5 years. At the moment, this is 2022 to 2027, 2023, sorry, to 2027. And the long term is 2022 to 2041 or 42 there. So in this, we have a pipeline of projects which come from all investors, including IPPs. Actually, the bulk are even IPPs. So that is jointly prioritized, and depending on readiness of each project and also the technology and the possible tariff that is proposed. That really is, we run a model. I think it's normally Plexus or something. So we run a model, and that actually prioritizes without any bias or favor. It's just random, and it runs it based on a priority of the need. Like we have base load, we have peaking, and then we have those which are base load and peaking, and then the price. So that is the way we use, that's the way we prioritize it. And I think in terms of prioritizing it, that has worked well. The only challenge is maybe commercial risks, like getting a PPA in place, getting the regulatory approval in terms of, getting the land to set up a project. Those are things which they usually derail a project. And then in terms of these remote places, developing like Paka, Silali, and all these places, or Suswa. Yeah, I agree with you. We all have to work together to develop the infrastructure. And I can tell you, yeah, as I said, it requires quite some funding, and our transmission line company. I think we are moving towards a public-private partnership where the transmission line is going to be built not necessarily by KETRACO alone, which is government entity, but even by the private, and be able to be paid things like willing judges when we use their line. So that is how we plan to go ahead as government to try and mitigate the need for this huge infrastructure requirement to evacuate power from these remote places. Thank you, Dr. And then I have to respond to one question Dr. had said about structuring projects which have clear timelines and also deliverables. As a matter of fact, I think you said private sector and government don't. Government, by the way, we are also government, but we deliver projects on time. And we don't sit back and say we are government, we are not going to deliver on time. We do deliver on time. endeavor to deliver on time and budget. So we are together in this. Thank you, Dr.
Asante, Mr. Kirui and Dr. Onacha. We are on foot.
Adding the one question, this fast track, this geothermal projects. In my view, the PPP structure we can fast track these projects.
Okay, thanks for the addition. So just to wrap up the session, I think what we're understanding is that yes, there's been a couple of learnings, but it will be good to have one collaboration amongst the IPPs to ensure that we are capturing the learnings going forward, and that will mean government support in terms of policy frameworks, especially for IPPs. And then we need to see how best we start to conceptualize projects, and how we do that is one, research and development. If we can get a lot of attention towards research and development, that helps us de-risk the resource as early as possible. The use of technology as well, trying to see what technologies out there that we can use back home here to understand how best we can, again, de-risk the resource as much as possible. Capacity building for our people to ensure that we get from 10% to now at least 50 or 100% in the years to come, and a lot of questions around policy. Thank you so much, gents, for your time. We have to close it up. Thanks for the audience around the world and the audience in the room. Thank you for your time. Thanks for a great session.